driver's ed. We're going to wait as we normally do, just a few minutes for people to log on. So make sure that you put your name in the comments for YouTube, and also to send me a text to let me know that you are here and present. Today is one of my favorite classes to teach. Sign signals, pavement markings, although we're going to start off talking about turning first, since we weren't able to finish everything that we needed to cover yesterday. We will take care of business, finishing up, and then we'll get right into today's lesson. If you do have the sign sheet, I'm going to actually hold up the key because I got the key, because we're going to do this today. So make sure that you have your computer or phone, whatever you can use besides what you're viewing today's session on, to take a look at the sign test. So try to take a moment and get something that you can. If you're near a printer, I guess you could even print it out. I probably should have included that in the folder, but I find that when I give people work prior to when we cover it, they do it before I want you to do it. And there's a reason why we wanted to wait on this today. So welcome everyone. Oh, we only got 10. Still waiting for people. Okay, now we're getting a few more. Okay, let's get into today's lesson. We're going to deal with turning. So get out some paper and something to write with. So we're going to kind of go through this relatively quick, since I don't want to spend too much time, because we do want to get into sign signals and pavement markings. But I do want you to write down, and because yesterday's lesson did deal with vision, about where to look, when to look, how to look, because the window into our mind is through our eyes. So once we see things better, we should be becoming a better driver, or at least making better judgments when it comes to driving. So let's take a look at this, if I can get this to cross over here. Watch this video.
The corner of Firestone and Bandera, this furniture store here, and you can see that hole there. It's the shape of a CHP Cruiser, because during that pursuit, that's what we saw. That Cruiser went right through it. We have earlier tape of that. This is the pursuit that started at 4:45 this morning. Here you go. We're going to slow it down for you. That white sedan there, making the quick turn there onto Bandera, and the CHP Cruiser right into that building. Good news is the...
Okay, if you take a look at that video really close, we know that it is a aerial viewpoint of a car chase, where a police car is trying to apprehend a person in a vehicle. The person that's trying to get away made a much better turn, even at a higher speed. So the question is, why did the police officer take the turn so wide and crash into that building? Could be one of two things. One, he's a bad driver, which I don't think that's the case, because they do get extensive training. Or the brakes are bad, where he was braking, or his steering mechanism wasn't working correctly. So there was a mechanical breakdown of the police car. But a lot of people do not go where they want to go because they're not applying the brakes at the right time or steering the right amount to make a decent turn. So this is what I want you to continue to write down for notes, because there's a lot of numbers today. 20, 30 seconds ahead is how far you want to be looking down the road. So if you know where your road is, where you want to be turning, it's a lot easier planning your position. And we talked about center, left of center, right of center, far right, far left. So it's a lot easier to get your car into the position to make a decent turn when we're looking that far down the road. So we're looking for a break in the yellow line for a left turn. We're looking for a break in the white line for a right-hand turn. We're looking for our street signs, which are green. We're looking for maybe stop signs or traffic lights that are telling there are intersections up ahead. So there are ways that we can look up the road and understand where we're going to have to actually be making a slow turn. So your signal is always going to be something that needs to be on before making a turn. So I want you to write down 100 feet. And how can you gauge 100 feet? A lot of people tell me they do not understand what 100 feet looks like. So this is what I want you to write down. The distance between two telephone poles is close to 100 feet. Could be a little bit more, but it's close enough. Now, 500 feet is what you're going to use for a guide on the highway. And 500 feet basically translates into your last sign before your exit. And the reason why we want our directional on at these time frame is we want people to be able to back off and react to what we're doing. We want them to be off our back bumper at a good following distance, that they're not impeding on what we're trying to do. So always check, once you put your signal on, then check your rear view mirror for traffic behind you. Then you're going to be checking your blind spot in the direction that you want to go. So right side mirror, turning right, left side mirror, you're turning left. And you don't have to write down the speeds that I want you to make a turn here, but I want you to think about it. Right-hand turns have to be slower than left-hand turns. Left-hand turns are a little bit wider, a little bit longer, so it can go at a slightly faster speed than a right-hand turn. But what we have found for most people, a range of 5 to 10 miles per hour is probably a decent speed to be making a right-hand turn. On a left-hand turn, you could probably increase it by 3, 8 to 13, okay? But remember, if there's oncoming traffic, and this is at the bottom of this sentence, you must stop before you make your turn. If traffic is too heavy, you cannot cut in front of another vehicle to make a left-hand turn, because if the car that's coming towards you has to brake, then you did not yield the right of way, okay? And a lot of times you're going to hear a horn if you cut someone off. Now, here are two terms that you probably have never heard of in dealing with driving. Gap and hole. Okay, a gap or hole in traffic basically tells a person whether they should pull out into traffic. So a gap is a space between vehicles, but a hole is much bigger. A hole is basically when you're looking at a cluster of traffic. So there could be two cars that are coming close together, and then there is no vehicles for a while, and then there's 3 or 4 more cars in a cluster coming. So between the 2 and the 3 is your opportunity, your hole into traffic. But if cars are spaced out 3 to 4 seconds, which is normally what your following distance is going to be, we look at that more like a small gap. So you always want to be looking for a hole. And my philosophy for people when they're turning out into traffic is don't take your first opening, take your best opening. So when you can look way down the road, let's say there's 3 openings, 3 choices that you have. Take the one that is best for you. It may be the first, but it could be the last. But choose wisely, that way you're not cutting people off. Constantly doing vision checks when you're approaching an intersection, looking left, looking right, looking straight ahead. just like we said yesterday, you don't want to be fixed on looking straight ahead with tunnel vision at that target. Your eyes do need to move around. You're using your peripheral vision to pick up movement, picking up color to see what is happening on the roadway. Okay, this is not in the textbook, this is not in the manual, but I think this is very important for you understanding with when turning out in front of other vehicles. So when we talked about looking for a gap or a hole, if you see a vehicle that's coming towards you, let's say that you're turning left and you're looking to the left where traffic's coming from, these three things have to be answered in the affirmative. When making a turn, can you say without a doubt, you can tell that they've got their turn signal on? Okay, they do. Can you tell? Have they changed their speed? Yeah, I can tell that the car is slowing down. I see a slight pitch to the front of their vehicle. Third thing, have they changed their position? We talked about making a left turn, you're going closer to the yellow center line. On a right-hand turn, you're staying closer to the white edge line. So if you can say yes to these three questions, then pulling out into traffic is a safe and wise thing to do. What are some of the common problems that we find when people are turning or using their turn signals? At the top of the list, people go way too fast for turns. I would say the majority of people go way too fast for turns. Late directional. You have to give people time to react to what's going on. Over or understeering. I do want you to write this one down. An oversteer means you're turning too tight and you're probably maybe cutting on a right-hand turn, you're going over the curb. An understeer, on a left-hand turn, you're going to over the white edge line. And on a right turn, you're going over the yellow line. Okay, it's way too wide. So over is too tight, under is too wide. Now, I can't tell if this is going to be a problem with this class, but I will tell you, in all the years that I've been teaching, I find at least 3 to 4 people in a driver's ed class have a hard time still with their left and their right. And that's okay. I mean, it's something you got to work out, but I'd rather have you, listen to this, I'd rather have you, if I give you the direction, go left. I'd much rather have you put your right signal on, make that mistake, and still go to the right, even though I said left. The problem that I have is if I tell you to go left, you put your right signal on, and then you turn left, because then you're communicating something that you're not doing. And that's hard to deal with, and people are going to get really frustrated out on the road if you do that. You can't find the turning area. People just go by the turn. You get the direction from your parents, take the next street on the left, but you just miss it. Then you're going to have to deal with how you're going to get back to where you want to go. Remember, don't slam on the brakes. Don't turn late. Just go down the road. Find a place, parking lot to turn around. Find a driveway that you can pull into. Anything that's going to help you make a safe turnaround. You don't want to do a U-turn necessarily unless it's safe and legal. A three-point turn you could do, but I don't recommend it. I'd rather see you pull into a driveway or pull into a parking lot. And then a lot of people keep their directional on even after a turn. Now, the old state manual used to have questions in the back. In your manual that you have, if you've gone through it in the PDF file, at the very end of the file, they only give you 11 sample questions. So that's why I'm giving you a lot of information with reading and doing the chapter test in the textbook, because I want to broaden your testing skills and get you used to looking at multiple choice and answering questions. And that brings me to someone posed a question to me last night about when to put on your turn signal. The way that the manual has it compared to the textbook is a little bit different. We just went over 100 feet in town, 500 on the on the open road. And I believe in the textbook it gives you different choices, and people are having a hard time. It really wants to be like 500 feet. I guess who texted me, I'm not going to mention who it was, but they thought it was C, which was a half a mile. That's still way, way, way too much, giving a warning of where you're going to be making your turn. So that would have been D. But even D's too much for what we have, unless D is referring to the highway. I wish in the textbook they would have referred to what type of roadway that you're on. Other situations that may arise, hand signals, you have to know. So bicyclists, mopeds, motorcycles may use hand signals, so you should be able to interpret the information that they're giving you. Or if your turn signals don't work, you're going to have to use your hand signals out the window. Write down in your notes, tapping your brakes. Why would you ever do that? Tap would be like, tap, tap, tap. Why would you do 3 quick successions of hitting the brake pedal? Well, one is because there is no place to turn off on a highway. And what we call a turn off on a highway is a deceleration lane. So some deceleration lanes are very, very short. So before you get there, you're going tap, tap, tap. That way, when people see that fluttering of your brake pedal, they go to their brakes. So you've started to have them slow down. That way, when you do brake a little bit harder than normal, they're not going to be right on your back end. Now, tapping your brakes for parking is only necessary for parallel parking. Okay? So before you get to your parallel parking spot, you're going to hit the brake a couple times. That will get people on their brakes, and then that will allow you to pull up in front of the empty parking spot and for you to back in. And the last thing that I want you to write down is that a pothole, if something's fallen off the back of a vehicle, you may tap your brakes a few times just so that they don't see what's in the road like you do, so that's going to give them a chance to go around you. Okay, following distance. The law states that drivers must not follow another vehicle more closely than is reasonable. So in your notes, I want you to write, a reasonable following distance is 4 seconds. And then if it's bad weather, it has to be 4 or 5. I mean 5 to 6, excuse me. Because they changed. It used to be 3, and then it went to 4 to 5 for bad weather. Now it's gone to 4, and now it's gone 5, 6. So really more distance is always going to give you more time. And I think that's what they're trying to say. Now, following another vehicle, and we're talking about stopping or in traffic, so let's write down a few things here. If you ever have any type of an incline, you're going up a slight hill, you should stay back 1 car length. So I want you to write that down. Now, when you're stopped in traffic on level ground, you want to see their tires still touching the pavement. So if you see their vehicle tires resting on the pavement, you're back far enough. And that translates to probably about 5 or 6 feet. A lot of people get so close you can't even read the license plate. If you can't read the license plate of the car in front of you, you're way too close. And with crosswalks, I want you to write down about a car length, 10 to 15 feet. And never stop on a crosswalk in heavy traffic. So if you're stopped in traffic and any portion of your vehicle is on the crosswalk, that's illegal. You've got to give people that are crossing the ability to get all the way and have full access of that crosswalk. When following a fire truck, you should stay back about 500 feet. You can write this down. Anything that deals with driving in New Hampshire and it has something to do with fire and it has a number, there's going to be a 5. Everything that I've ever read about anything to do with fire in New Hampshire, there's a 5 in the number. So that's going to be the easy way on a multiple choice, is just look for numbers that have 5s in it, because it's going to be one of those. What should you do with a tailgater? And we're going to talk about aggressive driving later in another class, but right now I want you to write down these 3 things in order of how you would handle somebody that is getting too close to you. First thing is tap your brakes. It says flash, but tap your brakes. And if you tap your brakes, 2 things will happen. One, just what you want to happen. They back off. That's the positive thing of tapping your brakes. They realize they're too close and they kind of apologetic. You may see them put their hand up like, sorry, I didn't realize too close. I'll back off. And people are nice about it. It happens every once in a while. But I'd say the majority of people do the negative part. They get closer because they say, oh, you're tapping your brakes. You think I'm close? Watch this. They'll get closer. They'll beep the horn at you. They'll give you the finger. Because now it's kind of a game. Okay, I want you to go faster. You don't want to go faster, and you don't want them to get too close to you, but they still get too close. Just do one of the next two things. Reduce your speed in an area that they can get by you safely. Remember, they're not supposed to pass you on a solid yellow line. So if you move over far right, get away from the center of the roadway, you may give them an opportunity, but you don't want to do this at the top of a hill or just around a corner because you don't know what's coming. They don't know what's coming. So you want to do it in a place where it's safe. And then lastly, maybe a choice that you want is to pull over to the side of the road and just let them by. So those are different ways that you can handle someone that's following a little bit too close. Definitely this is going to be on the midterm or final, so write down these time intervals with where you're looking. We've already had the 20, 30 second ahead. That's your visual lead of how far you're looking down the road. Within the 15-second visual lead, you're basically coming up with 3 or 4 problems that you think may happen. So let me give you an example. You look 20, 30 seconds down the road, and the furthest you see down the road is you see a traffic light. And then up a little bit from the traffic light, you see a person walking a dog. And then up a little bit closer to you, you see someone that's pulling out from the left. And you're not quite sure, are they turning right or turning left? So you've got 3 situations. So within that 15-second time frame, you're thinking, okay, now the next thing is 5 to 15 seconds is response time. So within that 5 to 15 seconds, you're thinking, okay, with that vehicle that's coming up that's turning, what should I do? Should I change my position? Should I move to the right and slow down? Okay, let's do that. Okay, now I'm coming up to the person on the right of me that's walking the dog. So now I'm going to move left of center and I'm going to speed up because I see a car that's coming and I don't want to be near that car when I'm going around this person. So I'm going to speed up a little bit to get around the person walking the dog. And then lastly, you're still looking up the road at the traffic light and you notice that it's no longer green. It is changing to yellow and you're choosing to stop for the yellow light and not to go through because you still got a distance to go before you get there. So you've picked up 3 different situations and you've done 3 different things. We've already talked about the following distance, so we've got the 3 seconds, so we don't have to worry about the car in front of us because we're far enough back. And then this last time frame that I want you to write down is very important because when you get out to drive with me, you'll probably at some point possibly feel the car slow down and you're not on the brake pedal and you're thinking, why is this car slowing down? In the driver's ed vehicle, I have an instructor's brake. Now, normally I'll give you direction on what I want you to do. But for some reason, if I can't speak it out quick enough, or I don't think you have enough time to deal with it, I'm going to use my instructor brake. So write down in your notes, anything that's less than 3 seconds and I'm braking, we're in the crash zone. There is something that I don't think that you have enough time to deal with or that you're not capable of handling. I'm jumping in and I'm helping you out. Now, unfortunately, your parents don't have that brake, so they're probably screaming at you at this point. Brake, 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 brake. But you're definitely in a situation that you didn't handle correctly or you didn't have enough time to handle. So just remember that. But I didn't mention this too when we were talking about licensing. If for whatever reason when you go out for your license test and they are yelling at you, brake, 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 or they grab the steering wheel, your driving test is automatically done. Okay, that's an automatic failure if they have to help you tell you when to brake or how much to brake or grab the steering wheel. So you should remember that. Always drive at a slow enough pace on your driving test that you're going to be able to handle everything that's coming at you. Passing is something that I normally don't go out and teach people how to do. If we do have a situation where we have to pass somebody on the highway on our highway lesson, then by all means, I'll let you pass. But I'm not gonna, go out. I'm gonna pick on. I know Hope. I saw that name today. I know Hope's listening. If I'm driving with Hope, I'm not gonna say Hope. I want you to pass that car in front of us. Unless it's legal, unless it's safe, we're probably not going to do it. It does take extra skill and judgment. So you're going to probably do your first pass either with your parents or maybe you're going to do it all by yourself. You won't be doing it with me or with a parent. So just to put things in perspective, if you're on a highway going 55, plan on needing about 10 to 20 seconds to complete a pass. It does take time. So you've got to know, can I complete this maneuver in the time frame that I have, what I can see with cars coming towards me? Because if you have any doubt at all with passing, you shouldn't do it. You should wait. Don't be in such a hurry or be such a risk taker that you put yourself in this situation. So first you should check the passing lane, then check your blind spot, signal, then move over. Probably if it's a two-way roadway, you're moving to the left, but if you're on a highway with multiple lanes, you can pass on the right. Now, when I say keep up your speed, you want to probably be going 5 to 10 miles faster than the car that you're passing. Because if you're going the same speed that they are, it'll take you forever. So the faster that you try to go out and pass somebody, the easier it's going to be. Okay, check to see, and I do want you to write this down. I will test you on this. How do you know when to get back after passing somebody? You've got to be able to see their headlights, both of them. So the whole grille of their vehicle. If you see the whole grille of their vehicle in your rearview mirror, it's time to move back over. Then it's safe. Now you've taken care of it. So signal before you move back. Try to get back into your lane within 200 feet of any car that's coming towards you. You don't want to be, white knuckling it where a car has to go over the edge line to let you in. The car that you're passing has to move over. That's just a bad pass. You just didn't do it correctly. Passing on the right, only if there's enough pavement to allow you to pass. So I do want you to write down these three things. Okay, so always make sure if you're going to go around somebody, someone's turning left, okay, which is legal for you to go around to the right, but you've got to stay on the pavement. If your vehicle goes off onto the soft shoulder, it's an illegal maneuver. Can't pass people on the right-hand side going into the soft shoulder. Not feasible, not safe. On a one-way street like downtown Durham or Dover, if you got two lanes going in the same direction, you could pass right to left, left to right. You could go in either direction. Same thing with multi-lane highways. Doesn't matter which way you pass, left or right. But most people will say preferably you should always pass people on the left. More people are more apt to check side view mirrors and look over their left shoulder a little bit easier than passing on the right. But you can do it in these situations. When is passing not allowed? Okay, unless the left lane of the road is clear. A crest of a hill, you don't know what's coming over on the other side, so you want to hesitate, wait till you get over the top of the hill, and wait till there's a straightaway where it's legal and safe for you to do it. Makes sense, don't do it around a curve. So these are common sense. Now we're getting into footage questions. So the first footage question I want you to write down is bridge, tunnel, or viaduct, 100 feet. Okay, 100 feet, like I said, 2 telephone poles. A viaduct is basically an underpass on a highway. It's an area that's to the left of you on a roadway that slopes down and forms a V. In New England, it's usually a grassed area that's sloped down. But when you get into a metropolitan area in a city where roadways and there's a lot of concrete, you'll see a concrete area that dips down and forms a V. That's a viaduct. 100 feet of an intersectional railroad crossing, and then no passing zones marked by signs. So I want you to write this down. A no passing zone sign is the shape of what we call a pennant. Okay, it's a sideways triangle, really thin one. And it's one of the only signs, not the only, but one of the few signs that will be posted on the left side of the road. You may see a wrong way sign, do not enter sign, or a stop sign posted on the left-hand side of the road just to reinforce that they don't want you to go in that area or to stop, because the stop sign to the right you can't see, especially if there's multiple lanes. But a no passing zone sign is one of the few signs that you'll see that's on the left-hand side of the road, and it also is at the beginning of a solid yellow line. Two lanes, right side is for slow moving traffic, left side is for passing. On a multi-lane highway, right side is for slow, middle's for the smoothest, and then left for high speed or passing. So that's just a basic rundown of turning and passing, making things a little bit easier for you when you get out onto the road. The last thing that I want to talk about, and I should have mentioned this when we talked about going for your driver's test. They will test you on a merge, yield, or a lane change. So write this down. I cannot stress enough. This is so important. They will test you on these 4 steps. Now, they use an acrostic called SMOG. So their 4 steps is signal, mirrors, over the shoulder check, and then go. So signal, mirrors, over the shoulder check, then go. I basically spell it out for what we call these things. So first thing is always use your directional. You've got to communicate to people that you want to be making a lane change. Remember, when you're on like downtown Durham, nobody knows that you're in the left lane wanting to go to the right. You could look in your mirror over your shoulder all you want, but people aren't going to help you out because they don't know what you're doing. So the minute you put your signal on, people are going to either slow down, speed up, but they're going to react to that directional. So now when you look in your mirror, rear view and then side view mirror, you're getting a better representation of what people are going to do. Are they going to let you go? Are they not going to let you go? But at least it's going to be easier for you to figure that out once you put that directional and then check your mirrors. Then do a blind spot check, which means just bring your chin to your shoulder. Don't look way over your shoulder. You just want to bring your chin to your shoulder. And then the last thing, move to the other lane by increasing speed, maintaining, or slowing your speed. But it's all based upon what you're getting with your mirror checks. So that took care of turning. So we are no longer doing turning. So now we're going to do sign signals and pavement markings. So what we're going to try to look at is what do we have in front of us to help us when we're driving? How can we make sense of the road ahead? So we've got to look at our arrows. We've got to look at our signs. Now remember how I just mentioned it, that most signs are to the right. There are only a few signs that are to the left. Notice you've got a left stop sign, just like the no passing zone sign. So we do have signs over on that side. I don't know. I still got my music going. Let me get rid of that. Okay. What I want you to do is to get out what I sent you, and if I didn't send it to you, I'm going to put it up here right here. Okay? So I'm going to give you about 3 or 4 minutes, okay, to look at this sign test and answer all those 30 questions. So each of those 30 slots has to have a sign in it. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes. So I'm looking at my clock. It says 4:33. So at 4:36, okay, we're going to go over what these signs are. I'm going to see how well you did, okay? Okay, you got 3 minutes. Go. How's everybody doing? Okay, let's take a look. I know I didn't give you a whole lot of time, but I wanted to make you feel rushed a little bit about answering these questions, because when you go for your driver's test, remember they're only giving you 40 minutes on the 40 questions, which is really more than enough time to do it. But this is usually harder than what most people realize. Now, what I want you to take a look at A, C, E, G, and I. Okay, all those signs that I mentioned right there can only have one meaning. Okay, one message would be found on A, C, E, G, and I. Now, sign D and F is an orange sign, so we know orange is construction. So the rest of this test was between the sign H and the sign B. Now, how many people had a hard time answering all these questions real quick? Because it was a really simple test. Now, I'm going to add, let's see if I can get another, let me get way down. I don't think this is gonna, let me try to see if I can get it. Here we go. All right. Okay, there are the answers. So 1 is H, 2 is B, 3 is B, 4 is F, 5 is D, 6 is B, 7 is G, 8 is H, 9 is F, 10 is D, 11 is B, 12 is H, 13 is H, 14 is C, 15 is H, 16 is H, 17 is H, 18 is D, 19 is B, 20 is B, 21 is B, 22 is H, 23. If you got 23 wrong, you should start driver's ed all over again. 24 is B, 25 is B, 26 is H, 27 is H, 28 is B, 29 is I, and 30 is E. So if this was your driving test, if they just gave you a driving test on these signs, you could only miss 6. So if you got more than 6 wrong, you would have failed your license test. Okay, you have to know your shapes. You have to know your colors. So hopefully after I told you how to look at signs, you know, if it's got one meaning, then you're not using it again. So hopefully this helped you a little bit. I know that some of you probably did this last night. So you already had this done. But I wanted to give this to you just so that you know, you think you know your signs because you're smart enough to read. But there are going to be symbols, and there's going to be times that a sign will just confuse you. But you have to take the shape and the color and formulate the best possible answer of what it's trying to communicate to you. So let's kind of get right into the different types of signs. So let's get back to this. So there's a whole lot of information out on the roadway. So when we have signs that are grouped together, at times it's like, wow, it's just too much information. I can't read everything. Here we've got signs telling us there's no parking to the left, but if you went to the right, you're limited to 15 minutes. But then there's a time frame that you've got to be thinking about. And then down below, it's telling you, well, you could do it on this side of the street on the 2nd and the 4th Tuesday of the month. And if you don't do it, then you're going to be towed. That's hard to read when you're moving. Okay. Granted, this isn't a parking lot, so you're going to be able to process a little bit easier. But whenever signs are grouped together, like with green signs and blue signs and brown signs and yellow signs, they're very close together. You've got to see it, process it, and then on to the next one, because you'd have to slow down and really think about it, and that's going to aggravate people behind you when you're driving. So what I want you to write down, and this is going to be the best way to really get a good foundation of what this information, the signs and the pavement markings, what it's giving us. We can break it down into 4 categories. So the first category is color. So write down in your notes, there are only 7 colors that you're going to have to remember. You should memorize those 7 colors for the midterm next week. Shape. You should have a basic understanding of what is the shape telling. Now, I gave you the quiz where the shapes were there. Wonder if I gave you a test and I asked you, what does a pentagon mean? What does a crossbuck sign indicate? What does a shield sign indicate? Some of you are probably going, I really don't know. But if I gave you a picture of what that shape is, your mind is going to instantly know what it's basically trying to communicate to you. So remember, on your test, you're going to not only get shapes, but you just may get the description of what the shape is. You're going to have to know it. And then signs can be broken up into regulatory signs or warning signs. Okay, so write down, regulatory means law. It's a rule. You could be given a ticket if you're not obeying that sign. And then the rest of the signs are going to be warnings. So there are a lot more warning signs on the road than there are regulatory signs. The most important color for you to remember is red. Red is telling you that you can't do something, stop, or prohibition. So prohibition means don't do something. So here at the bottom picture, it's an off-ramp to a highway. You got the do not enter sign in a wrong way. And then up above, we've got a stop sign. Now, what I want you to write down with stop signs, always stop at the line. You want the front of your car at the white line. You don't want to go beyond it on your first stop. If you can't see the white line, then you stop at the sign. Now, there are 2 types of stopping a vehicle, so I want you to write this down. The first one is what we call a legal stop, which what we have here. Okay, you've got to legally stop at the white line. But wonder if you stop at the white line, and we talked about yesterday how our vision can be blocked by other cars, by trees, by buildings. If you've got to move up, if you've got to go up a little bit further again and stop again, we call that a safety stop. You want to always make your legal stop at the white line and then do a couple safety stops as you're increasing your line of sight so you can see the road better. Don't say, well, I know this is a bad intersection, I can never see here, and go way beyond the white line first. You want to make the initial, because people need to know that you're stopping. They're looking at you coming to that white edge line. So stop there and then move up. And what's the difference between a rolling stop and a resting stop? Well, a rolling stop means that your tires never come to a pitch. So there is a rotation of your tire as it goes, okay? And we always want to feel a pitch when we come to a stop sign. I don't think I put in the picture. I usually have a picture here of yeah, this is usually a movie I can click on, but I didn't put it in. I don't know why I didn't. But anyways, this is a crosswalk where people come up and they don't stop at the stop line that's to the left up here in the picture. Because of the fence and because of the bush, people come around the corner on the left here and they're looking at the brick building in the middle of the road there where cars are coming around. And if they don't see any cars coming, then they roll. They roll right through that stop sign, and there's been a few times where pedestrians have almost been hit on this crosswalk, and this is very close to my house, so I see this all the time. And I'd probably say more than half of the people don't stop at the stop line. Here's another situation. I gave you this picture a little bit earlier. We have a right lane and a left lane. In the right lane, we can go straight or turn right, but if you're in the left lane, you have to go to the left. So your stop lines are visible, and you're starting to make a judgment of how much to be braking as you're coming up to this intersection. So remember, on your driving test, they're gauging you by when you brake and how well you brake, whether you're understanding and doing things correctly. So don't wait too long. It's better to slow down early and to coast up to it than to roll right through it or approach it way too fast. Okay, white signs can be broken up into 3 different categories. So what I want you to write down, white means law or rule, and then the white signs broken up into white with red, white with black, and white with green. So white with black is telling you what to do. So the example we have here in the picture is a speed limit. They want you to go 35. White with red lettering is telling you not to do something. So in this case, no parking between the 2 signs. And then lastly, white with green is guiding you to what is legal and what's not legal. So it's going to be used in parking situations. So with this sign, you can park for 2 hours between 8 and 5 Monday through Friday. But Friday night at 6 o'clock, you could keep your car in there until Monday till 10 because you've got the 2 hours Monday from 8 to 10. You can use those 2 hours on Monday morning. But Friday night, you can park your car and leave it there for the next 2.5 days. So you've got to read your signs. You've got to know what applies to you and what doesn't apply to you. Okay, blue signs. Okay, blue signs are for motorist services. So that would be like telephone, lodging, restaurants, hospital. Handicap, as we see in the picture, is probably the most common one we see because every parking lot has to have handicap parking. So blue signs are guiding us to what we have available to us as a driver. Yellow. Now, yellow can be broken up into 2 different types of yellow signs. Yellow, regular yellow, is general warning, and then yellow, which is kind of fluorescent greenish tint to it, the bottom picture, has to do with pedestrians or schools. Okay, so pedestrian crossings and school crossings or school zones will always be that neon yellow, that greenish yellow. So what I want everybody to do, whether it be on the comment section or you can text me, I want you to text me a yellow sign that you've seen on the side of the road. So everybody put in the comments or put in a text message that's coming through my phone a yellow sign that you've seen. We'll see how many people can come up with different and try to be somewhat different. I don't want everybody coming up with the same one. So think of kind of a strange yellow sign that you've seen. Okay, school zones. So you're getting the yellow that's warning you that you're approaching into a school area. And remember, when the lights are flashing, or what you may see is that the time frame. Now, this is near Mohammed, and what I want you to write down in your notes, we're going to cover this probably tomorrow with speed limits, is that the speed by a school is always going to be 45 minutes before school gets in and 45 minutes when school gets out. That's the only time that the school speed limit is going to be enforced. And notice it gives you Monday through Friday. You guys are giving me some good examples. They're popping up on my screen right now, so good job. Keep it coming. Okay, green, direction or guidance. We find this on the highway. We find this on street signs telling us which street that we need to turn into. I thought this was kind of a funny sign. Okay, my nephew lives in Oregon, and if you got on Route 20 on the West Coast and stayed on Route 20, it is 3,365 miles to get to Boston. Can you imagine how long that's going to take you? So you could go from coast to coast and never leave Route 20. I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, brown signs are the least visible, or the sign that we don't see that often. So brown means recreation. Orange is construction, and we're starting to see weather get warmer. So we're going to have more construction signs coming up than ever before, and it'll go right probably through October. So starting now, the first part of May till end of October, heavy construction time, because the roads aren't frozen anymore and they can dig them up and lay down pavement pretty easy. Okay, traffic signals from top to bottom. We talked about this yesterday. You need to know this. Red, yellow, green. Okay, red is the most important, as we said, because as you approach, if you're following a car or a truck, the light that you need to see most is the one that's at the top, and that's the red light telling you that you can't go through. Now, what I like about this picture is it is kind of confusing, because a lot of people think it's a yellow light. So if we were in class, I'd ask you, what color is that light? And a lot of people say yellow. Well, it looks yellow, but it's not. Remember, know the sequence. Don't go by what it looks like, because this was a picture that was taken with a phone that I had many, many years ago, and it just didn't process the color red very well. So think about it. When you put sunglasses on, depending on the shade of the glass, it's going to make lights look different. It's not going to give you the true color of the traffic light. So in your mind, it could be playing games with you. Now, another thing in this picture that's telling you that it's a red light is you've got a countdown on the crosswalk. So you should know. And by the way, when you have a countdown, everybody, car-wise, at the intersection has to stop. Everybody has a stoplight right now. So it makes things a little bit easier for pedestrians of when to cross. How about this traffic light? How confusing is that? You can see the blurred headlights of cars that have gone by. And actually, this is a piece of art that's over in Europe. But I know if I didn't know this area and I saw all those lights, I would really start to wonder what's going on. So there will be times when signs or lights are kind of at an angle, or lights could be out, or they be grouped together, and it's just going to be confusing, and you're going to have to come up with what you think the light is trying to communicate to you. So how do traffic lights work? And this is kind of a lengthy description. So all I want you to write down is that there's a magnetic field underneath the pavement that is activated when cars are going over it or waiting. So it trips. And I found an interesting video that kind of explains it. So I'm going to show you that right now.
This is the corner of Firestone and Bandera.
If you live in a major city, I can take a pretty good guess at one of your most common frustrations: traffic. In city driving, the journey is rarely better than the destination. In most cases, we just want to get where we're going. Traffic is not just frustrating, but it has consequences to the environment as well. All those idling vehicles have an impact on air quality. When you're stuck and sitting behind a long line of cars, it's easy to let your mind wander over solutions to our traffic woes. But traffic management in dense urban areas is an extremely complex problem with a host of conflicting goals and challenges. One of the most fundamental of those challenges happens at an intersection, where multiple streams of traffic, including vehicles, bikes, and pedestrians, need to safely, and with any luck, efficiently cross each other's paths. Over the years, we've developed quite a few ways to manage this challenge of who gets to go and who gets to wait, from simple signs to roundabouts, But one of the most common ways we control the right-of-way at intersections is the traffic signal. I'm Grady, and this is Public Works, my video series on infrastructure and the human-made world around us. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. More on that later. There are a lot of good analogies between cities and human anatomy, and roadways are no exception. Highways are like the aorta, with a high capacity and single major destination. Small collector roads are like the capillaries, with not much capacity but a connection to every individual house and business. And in between are the aptly named arterial roadways, the medium capacity connections between urban centers. Rather than ramps, overpasses, and access roads to control the flow of traffic, arterial roads use at-grade intersections through which only a few traffic streams can pass at a time. We call this interrupted traffic flow for obvious reasons. In most cases, these intersections are the limit to the maximum throughput of the roadway. In other words, increasing the number of lanes or speed limit won't have any effect on the overall capacity of the road. The only way to increase the number of vehicles that safely travel from point A to B is to increase the efficiency of the intersection. In addition, these intersections are where a vast majority of accidents occur. For these reasons, traffic engineers put a lot of thought and analysis into the design of intersections and how to make them as safe and efficient as possible. Controlling the flow of traffic through an intersection, otherwise known as assigning right-of-way, is an enormous challenge and almost always requires a compromise of numerous conflicting considerations, including space, cost, approach speed, cycle time, sight distance, types and volumes of traffic, and human factors like habits, expectations, and reaction times. Intersections also need to be rigidly standardized so that when you come to an unfamiliar one, you already know your role in the careful and chaotic dance of vehicles and pedestrians. From a throughput standpoint, the ideal intersection would cause no interruption to flow whatsoever, but you can't put a high-five interchange on every city block. On the other hand, simple signs are cost-effective and don't require any extra space, but they can't handle a lot of volume because they create an interruption for every single vehicle passing through the intersection. You can see why traffic signals are so popular. They aren't a panacea for all traffic problems, but they do offer a very nice balance of the considerations we discussed before. Relatively low cost, minimal space requirements, and the ability to handle large volumes of traffic with only some interruption. In their simplest form, traffic signals are a set of 3 lights facing each lane of an intersection. When the light is green, that lane has the right-of-way to cross. When the light is red, they don't. The amber light warns that the signal is about to change from green to red. Beyond this basic function, traffic signals can take on innumerable complexities to accommodate all kinds of situations. Let's take a look at a typical intersection here in the US to show how they work. At each approach to an intersection, there are 3 directions vehicles can go, called movements: right, through, or left. Right and through are usually grouped together as a single movement, so a typical 4-way intersection has 8 vehicle and 4 pedestrian movements. These movements can be grouped into phases of the traffic signal. For example, the left turn movements on opposite approaches can be grouped into a single phase because they can both go at the same time without conflicts. Traffic engineers use a ring and barrier diagram to sketch out how different phases of the signal are allowed to operate. Here's the ring and barrier diagram for our example intersection. The first phase is the major street left turns. Then the major street vehicle and pedestrian through movements. A barrier to clear the intersection. The minor street left turns, the minor street vehicle and pedestrian through movements, and finally another barrier before the cycle starts again.
Hi, I'm Rex Moore with the Motley Fool in front of BMW's self-driving exhibit.
There are an endless variety of phasing arrangements that traffic engineers use to accommodate various intersection configurations and traffic volumes for each movement. Even the simple decision of whether to use protected or unprotected left turns takes a significant amount of analysis and consideration. Another important decision is how long each sequence of a phase should last. Ideally, a green light should last at least long enough to clear the queue that built up during the red light. This isn't always possible, especially during peak times on busy intersections. In these cases where the intersection is saturated, the green light might be extended for each phase to minimize the startup and clearance times, which are periods when the intersection isn't being utilized to its maximum capacity. The amber light needs to last long enough for a driver to perceive the warning and decelerate their vehicle to a stop at a comfortable rate. 1 second for every 10 miles per hour or 16 kilometers per hour on the speed limit is a general rule of thumb. But traffic engineers also take into account the slope of the approach and other local considerations when setting the timing for yellow lights. In most places in North America, you're allowed to enter an intersection for the full duration of a yellow light, which means there needs to be a time when all phases have a red light to allow the intersection to clear. This clearance interval is usually about a second, but can be adjusted up or down based on speed limit and intersection size. So far, we've only been talking about signals on a set timing sequence, but most traffic signals these days are more sophisticated than that. Actuated signal control is the term we use for signals that can receive input from the outside and use that information to make decisions about light timing and sequence on the fly. These types of signals rely on data from traffic detection systems. These sensors can be embedded cameras or radars, but most commonly they're inductive loop sensors embedded into the road surface. They are essentially large metal detectors which simply measure whether or not a car or truck is present, sometimes to the annoyance of bicycles, scooters, and motorcycles that may be too small to trigger the loop. Whatever the type of sensor, they all feed data into an equipment cabinet located nearby. You've probably seen hundreds of these cabinets without realizing their purpose. Inside this cabinet is a traffic signal controller, essentially a simple computer that is programmed with specific logic to determine when and how long each light will last based on the information from the detectors. Actuated control gives a traffic signal much more flexibility to handle variations in traffic load. For example, if a nearby road is closed and traffic rerouted through a signal that doesn't normally see such high demand, it may need to be reprogrammed before the closure. A light equipped with actuated control will simply see the additional traffic and adjust its phasing accordingly. Same thing with special events like concerts and sports games that create huge traffic demands on irregular schedules, and even seasonal changes in traffic like in major tourist destinations. Actuated systems can also keep you from waiting at a long light when no one's crossing in the other direction. Finally, actuated control can help by giving priority to emergency vehicles and public transportation by using specialized detectors like infrared or acoustic sensors that communicate directly with certain types of vehicles. But actuated control isn't the end of the complexity. After all, it still treats each intersection as an isolated entity, when in reality each signal is a component of a larger traffic network. And each component of the traffic network can have an impact, sometimes a major impact, on other components in the system. Take the classic example of two signals closely spaced in a row on a major roadway. If one signal gives a green but the next one doesn't, cars can back up. If they back up far enough, they can sit through multiple cycles at an intersection without being able to pass through until the light beyond clears. It's a frustrating experience for anyone. A signal is inadvertently but significantly reducing the capacity of an adjacent signal. One solution to this problem is signal coordination, where lights can not only consider the traffic waiting at their intersection, but also the status of nearby signals. This is a very common configuration on long corridors with relatively minor but frequent cross streets. The signals on the major road are timed so that a large group of vehicles, called a platoon by traffic engineers, can make it all the way through the corridor without interruption. This type of signal coordination can significantly increase the volume of traffic that can pass through intersections, but it really only works on stretches of road that don't have other sources of traffic interruptions, like driveways and businesses. If the platoon can't stick together, the benefits of coordinating signals mostly gets lost. The obvious next step in efficiency is coordination of most or all the signals within a traffic network. This is the job of adaptive signal control technologies, or ASCT. In adaptive systems, rather than individual groups of lights, all the information from detectors is fed into a centralized system that can use advanced algorithms like machine learning to optimize traffic flow throughout the city. These type of systems can dramatically reduce congestion, but they're only just starting to be implemented in major urban areas. As sensors become more ubiquitous and computing power increases, traffic management may slowly but surely be relegated from civil engineers to software developers and data scientists. On the complete opposite side of centralization, many believe that self-driving cars are the next revolution in traffic management. If every vehicle could communicate and coordinate with every other vehicle on the road, interrupted traffic control could eventually become a thing of the past. But don't get your hopes too high. In dense urban areas, traffic congestion is often self-limiting. Especially during peak times, for every one person on the road, there are many more at work or at home waiting for the congestion to clear up before they head out. This latent traffic demand means that any increase in capacity will quickly be filled up with more traffic, bringing the congestion back to the same level it was before.
Okay, hopefully this shed a little bit of light on how traffic lights are designed and how we're trying to implement new technology so we don't have a lot of traffic jams. And I know this was pretty involved, but I thought it was pretty interesting when I came across it and thought that it would be better to have someone, describe it with visuals than for me just to talk through it. So hopefully that gives you a better insight of intersections. Now I do want you to write down the word opticom light, and in this picture we're stopped behind a red light and it's very hard to pick it up. But between the two red lights that were behind the car in front of us, so if we look straight up above between those two red lights, there's another little red light. An opticom light at an intersection tells you that there's a police car, ambulance, or fire truck that's coming. Now, a police car or an ambulance or fire truck, they have a device inside their vehicle that they can flip on and they'll make everybody get a red light. So that way that they can work their way in and around traffic. And I did have another video for this, but I don't think I downloaded it. I'll have to show it. We'll see it tomorrow. Okay, turning right on red. I want you to write down your notes that it's legal to turn right on a red light after a stop if there is no sign posted saying that you can't do it. And you're able to do that in all 50 states. Now, there may be some cities like Washington, D.C., I think parts of New York City, you cannot do this. So look for signs. But it is something that is legal throughout the country. So you come to a stop sign to make a right-hand turn. You look for a sign saying no turn on red. You don't see it. Then look to the left. No traffic coming or traffic is far back. You can legally turn right on red now. But remember, you have to come to a resting stop. You got to do that legal stop that we were talking about, not the safety stop, but a legal stop at the line, and then you can legally turn right on red. When traffic lights don't work, you have to go with the direction of a police officer. Okay, so he may be giving you a hand signal to go, he may be giving you a hand signal not to go, but whatever he's telling you, regardless, okay, you've got to obey that. Now, what do you do when there's no police officer around and the traffic light is out? Treat the intersection like a four-way stop. Everybody coming to the intersection stops. They check for traffic. If no one's coming, then they go. But if they're all coming at different times, you've got to figure out who's there, who's been waiting, and you'd put into practice the right of way that we've talked about. Light turns green. Whenever there is a traffic light that is green, it's telling us that we can go through as long as there's a place for us to turn. I don't know if you can tell by this picture, but there is a car carrier, semi-tractor trailer truck. Well, he is bottomed out and he's blocking the intersection. So even though we have a green light, we can't go through the intersection because he's blocking it. So so you don't want to go through if there's no place for you to go. Okay. When a light turns yellow, what you try to do is what we call clear the intersection, which means that if you're close enough to the traffic light, you're going through. If you're further back, then you're going to stop. And what we call that decision making is that there has to be a point of no returning, which means there has to be a point that as you're approaching that yellow light, you just can't stop at the stop line. You've got to go all the way through. And I'll try to find, I don't think I've got some of the videos clipped in that I wanted to put in for today. So write down point of no return. I think that might be the next slide. There we go. Point of no return. So know your speed and the stopping distance of your vehicle before you come to a stop. Because if you can't stop at the line, you might as well go through on the yellow line. You also need to know what's behind you. So check your rearview mirror. That will kind of dictate, whether you stop or you go through. And what I put down here for the last bullet is try to find an object off to the side of the road. So as you approach the traffic light that's green, you say in your mind, if I get to that mailbox and the light turns yellow, I'm going through. But if I'm in front of that mailbox, then I'm going to stop. So you've already made up your decision. You've already found your point of no return. So when you get there, you just live with the decision that you made. Now, this is something that you can practice when you're a passenger. You don't have to be a driver to practice point of no return. And the other thing I want you to remember too is that if you see a yellow light and you decide to go through, but as you're going through, you look straight up, the very top part of your windshield. If you see it turning red, guess what? You're running a red light, okay? You just ran a red light. You've got to be directly underneath it where you can't see the light. That means you're clearing throughout the intersection. So that's a good gauge. If you're seeing the light turn red, you're running a red light. And by the way, the lights don't automatically just turn green for the next side of traffic that's going through. There is a slight hesitation. Okay, traffic lights with arrows. Green arrows are what we call protected turns. So if it's a green arrow, we're the only one going in that direction. Now, people can still turn right on red, but they've got to yield to us. A red arrow is telling us that we can either turn right on red or we can't turn right on red. So here's a situation on this red arrow, we can't. But if that white sign wasn't there, we could stop for the red arrow, check for traffic, and then still turn to the right. And then a left arrow is usually going to be where you can't make a turn. Now, can you legally turn left on a red light? Yeah, you could if it was a blinking red arrow. So write that down. You can legally turn left on a red light, but it has to be an arrow light that's red, that's blinking. That's telling you that you're stopping and treating it like a stop sign. This is an intersection where someone was running a red light. It was a movie, but I don't have it embedded. If we were in class where I could actually show this, I would. But I'll probably show you something kind of like this tomorrow. So once again, I wasn't able to get through everything that I wanted to, so we're going to pick up. Let me get out of this. So we didn't get through everything that I wanted to. For some reason, I'm kind of lagging a little bit behind on this class. So tomorrow we're going to pick up, finish this. So all I want you to do for tonight, and I think Seth is the one that asked, I do not want you to send in the sign test. That was just for you to see how well you would do. So you just grade it yourself. Most people don't do very well. So if you didn't do well, don't, freak out about it. The other thing too is I bet you if you gave it to your parents wouldn't do very well either. So maybe that might be a fun thing to do. So tonight, all I want you to do is to read chapter 12 in the textbook, Responsible Driving, and do the questions and send that along. The worksheets that I gave you, just send those along. They were a little bit more involved than the chapter review questions that you had, so some of you have done that. So remember to send me this stuff. Some of you haven't been sending it, and I've been getting after some of you. For some reason, I don't have all your comments on YouTube next to my feed here, so I'm going to have to go in and see who's here. So remember today, sign out. Text me that you're off. So right now it says 5:15, so we're done for today. So I want to know that you stayed here for the whole thing. Tomorrow we'll finish it up, get into stopping and speed, and we're moving along. We're getting there. So good job. And like I said, this is good information. Really read your notes, look at the video again, because this is the basis of driving. It really is. If you can understand this stuff, it's really going to help you in your movement and understanding of what you got to do besides the physical part of braking, steering, and stopping. So have a good night. We'll see you again tomorrow at 4 o'clock.